Today we're working on a 2009 Volkswagen Jetta Wolfsburg edition with the 2.0T CCTA motor. Going to be replacing the intake manifold assembly. It has a broken actuator arm on the side, and I'm going to do the carbon cleaning while I'm in there. This is the new OE intake from Steve White Volkswagen in Greenville. Bought this for about 40 bucks, essentially over what I could buy the Euro one for. So I just got OE. Now to get in started, we're gonna basically just be taking some of the stuff out of the way. This boot down here is gonna be coming all the way off, and then the throttle body will be removed. Remove this entire intake up pipe to the throttle body from the intercooler all the way up to here. Then this evap line, then this fresh air intake. Remove the entire thing. And you have the PCV line there. Then this noise pipe coming up off of the intake pipe. Unclip it here and take the clamp off down there on the bottom. Remove that entire piece. It's held on by two T30 bolts. This gas line here is also held onto the intake with two T30 bolts. Remove the bolts, leave the lines attached to each other. They do not need to come off. Then this little PCV hose can come out of the way. This little evap line underneath of it right there. You can go ahead and remove that. That just runs around to the back. You don't need to take it apart in the back. That should get you started. Then you have the fuel feed line to the rail underneath here, 17mm nut. You can loosen that with a wrench. It'll help to remove the air box out of the way. Then underneath there, you should be able to see the nut on the other end of the line, 17mm also. You should be able to grab that with a wrench once the air box and stuff is out of the way. After you get that line loose, then you can take the T30 that's holding the line to the intake. It's sitting right under that PCV line right there, and snake that down out underneath and remove that line from the car. Disconnect this cam sensor here. There's T30 here holding these coolant lines. Take it off. Alright, so here you can see now I got the intake loose. Pretty much everything's out of the way now. I'm ready to go ahead and pull it off. I went ahead and just took the fan out of the way, made it easier for me to remove some of the piping and access the connectors. Just pull that panel off and you can get access to it. And then you got two T30s over here, two T30s over here. Unclip the electrical connector and then basically just pull the fan out the bottom. You know, it's real easy to do the fans on these. And then after that, I'm going to go through the process here. I got the PCV line first, then I removed the fresh air intake, then I removed the whole noise pipe assembly. Then I took the alternator bracket off the top because it kind of sticks over in the way, getting access to that throttle body there and to the T30 bolt for that intake. Then I went to that boost pipe here. I was really just going to take the top off, but it really didn't move out of the way enough for me, so I just took the lower cover and the fans out of the way. And then I went ahead and just loosened that T30 there. And the other one was missing. I loosened the boot on the bottom, unclipped that boost sensor, and then make sure your top's loose enough and pull that whole thing down out of the bottom. And then while I was down there, I removed the other two backside of these throttle body bolts and pulled that throttle body off out of the way. And then I went to the fuel line there and removed it. There's a 17 millimeter at the pump, 17 millimeter at the rail underneath. You can reach under there with a wrench, knock that loose, spin them off, and then you just got the T30 for the fuel line bracket to the intake manifold there. Then just snake that thing back out of that hole down the bottom there and take it off the car. Intake is loose now. Just these T30s along the top here. And then on the end, on the bottom, each one is going to be a 10 millimeter nut on a stud. And then in the center there to be another two T30s. You should be able to see the little access holes. You use a long extension in a T30. For the 10 millimeter nut on the left, I used a magnet to help me get it out. And the one on the right, I was able to just reach my hand down there and get it to keep it from falling into the abyss. Intake is loose now. Go ahead and remove the oil filter. It has a valve in it to keep the oil from spilling everywhere, but it will hit that sensor right there, and I don't think you can get it out because of the stud that 10 millimeter sits on, so you need to take that filter out of the way. Now what's going to happen when you pull this intake, you have to swap over injectors and rails and all, but you're either going to pull the injectors out of the rail or the injectors are going to come out of the head with it. Alright, now while you're here doing this, there's more that you need to look at, and you probably need to do this before you even start on this, because as I'll show you here in a second, you'll see under here this coupling between the oil cooler and the water pump has been leaking, and I didn't pay attention to that before. I believe you should be able to see that beforehand. Anyways, that means that the water pump's going to have to get changed, that coupling's going to have to get changed from the water pump to the oil cooler. I'm also going to change the gasket for the oil cooler and the alternator bracket gasket. Yes, the alternator bracket has a gasket as well. That bracket will be holding the alternator and the AC, so you'll have to unbolt those and then take the bracket off after you have the oil cooler and everything off. After this, I'm also going to have to change the chain in here because the chain has 5 degrees worth of stretch in it, so that'll be a separate video on doing the timing on this. But right now I'm going to be pulling the intake, changing it out, doing the carbon cleaning, and going to be doing the coupling, oil cooler gasket, bracket gasket, and then as well as on the back of the head, I'll show here in a second, the water outlet coming out of the back of the head. I saw that it was leaking, so that's going to have to get changed. Most of these lines here look fine though, but the water pump and the water pump belt are going to have to get changed. So I'm going to be upgrading that to all aluminum, as well as the coupler, which is plastic now, between the oil cooler and the water pump is plastic. That'll be all aluminum when I'm done. And then here's that coupler I'm talking about out of the back of the head. That has an O-ring seal on it there, so that whole piece, I'm going to buy that as one piece. That'll get changed, and I believe that's all I really changed, along with the rest of the stuff. It was like $900 worth of parts when I finally got done with everything here, including the timing and intake and all of this. So be prepared, look over this well before you get into it, and don't go halfway through it and then start looking like I did, and you'll lose time because then you'll have to push it aside, order more parts, and then come back to it. So make sure you check it over good, look at everything you need, and change it while you're in there so you don't ever have to go back in there, and do it all the way, because those oil cooler gaskets will leak soon enough. I've seen them leak on many Audis and VWs and other cars that have them. So just while you're in there, go ahead and change them. Look it all over for little things like this. Anywhere that's leaking, do it while you have everything out of the way. It's going to be the easiest thing for you to do. And you don't want to go back in there twice. I don't want to go back in there twice. And most of those gaskets are like really cheap, so don't skimp on them.